A2IM, the collective voice of independent music.
Hey guys, welcome to the session. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good? Yeah. A little bit of a detour from a typical panel. We are all broadcasting live from our home offices. I guess we'll just get right into it. We'll start talking about where genre is heading in the music industry. I'll do a quick intro of who I am, and I'd love to hear from you guys about your backgrounds, just briefly. My name is Jacqueline Schneider. I am a journalist and strategist. I've been working at the intersection of music and technology for about a decade. And the topic of genre is really exciting to me and something that I've always been interested in. So I'm really excited to have this combo. Maybe I'll kick it off to you, Brandon.
Hey, I'm Brandon Hixon. I'm head of Black music at Symphonic Distribution, and I also have a management company where I represent De La Soul, Aquafina, Show Me Josie, and 11 Lights.
Nice. John?
Hey, thanks. I'm John Stein. I'm the North American team lead for the editorial team at Spotify. So basically, the team that handles playlist curation and programming for US and Canada.
Nice. Harrison, hello.
Hey there. I'm Harrison Green. I'm on the independent label relations team at SoundCloud, basically handling all indie accounts on the East Coast US and as well as Australia, New Zealand, and yeah, I've worked in management and distribution and a label prior, so yeah, should be a fun topic.
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I wanted to just bring up is the definition of genre. Like, what genre is such a word? It's such a trendy word. I suppose it's thrown around a lot. I'm interested. What does genre mean to each of you?
I'll take a stab at it first. I feel like now in this day and age, genre, it's more of a cultural thing for me in regards to music. So like, at the foundation of where I work within hip hop, R&B, like hip hop is the foundation, is the genre, and then there's other things that live on top of it. Like hip hop is the genre, it's the culture, and then it's other things that's kind of sprout off of that. You have others like subgenres where you have grime, or you have drill, or you have trap. But yeah, genre to me, it's kind of a cultural reference.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense. What are you thinking, Harrison? It's genre to you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting kind of thinking about this whole subject. And I guess it kind of comes from the business trying to classify all this kind of new music into certain spaces. I don't see like genres as anything that's going anywhere. I think they're just bending a lot. And I think we've seen that through the history of our business. I do think that like coming from like a DSP like SoundCloud, like a platform like that, certainly kind of have a hand in helping create the current space we're in now, where you can post content in seconds after it's finished, rather than going through kind of the traditional filters of the business. And labels and traditional A&R, I think, are still super important, but they're not totally necessary, depending on the act, or at least to kickstart your career. You know, maybe it can be like the second tier, like that's what you work your way up to after finding your voice a little bit.
Yeah, that's super insightful. John, I'm interested in what your take on genre is from the editorial side.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as an important cue point, I think, or signifier for you know, the audience specifically. I think it's pretty clear from like an industry perspective how we use genre. Think of sharing music and communicating within the industry, but I think for users, it's also can be a valuable signifier. I think I have seen a shift in that, like, you know, I think historically, you know, radio has really helped to define genre, and now that consumption is so much more broad and so much easier to find music, you know, I think some of the signifiers have changed a bit. You know, I think like something like lo-fi beats to study to being such an important cultural reference, especially right now, while we're all in quarantine. It's like, you know, there's elements of hip hop, ambient music, you know, but these genres aren't usually thrown around in that conversation. It's more about the vibe or a certain mood. So I think there are some of these shifts happening, but I still think genre, you know, in some level is always going to be an important signifier.
Yeah, for sure. How, you know, I think genre is kind of emerging from a lot of locations, I would say. And I'm interested in how you guys are thinking about this, or what it means to you to have like a genre by location. You know, I think we see this a lot in like Afrobeat, and we've seen it in like drill music, and like, you know, there's the genre, I guess, kind of extends to a location, it feels like now. Where does that kind of come into play?
Yeah, it's interesting, genre by location. Like even thinking about drill music, and drill music starting in Chicago and then taking on a life of its own in the UK, and then coming back from the UK, bouncing back into New York with the New York drill sound.
Right.
I think it's interesting. I think like, especially in hip hop, like every location's always had its own sound. Speaking of, you know, the States, like the West Coast had its sound, New Orleans had its sound. The Midwest has a thing, the East Coast has a thing. I think location, it just plays a big part in defining what things sound like. And that usually happens because of the local culture, just local culture, local sounds. But yeah, I think location is everything when it comes to genre. You sound like where you're from. But I think with the internet, there's things are bleeding into each other, but they still kind of hold their local relevance. Like I think Chicago drill definitely sounds different from New York drill. And the same with London, like they still hold their local elements, whether it's, you know, different vocal textures, like within accents, even slang. So like you just sound like where you're from.
Right. I guess in like a global context, like how, you know, I'm interested in, you know, from like a SoundCloud, Spotify outlook, like how are you thinking about these, you know, the globalization of genre, I suppose?
I think it's super interesting. I mean, I program a lot of indie music, and in like the indie genre, you know, which I think
which is a lot of things.
so many things, you know, even in like the context of indie rock. I talked a lot to like my British counterpart, and you know, the context for the word indie there is like, it's such a part of the mainstream that it's even like, not to offend anyone, but like part of like lad culture there, you know, where it's kind of like a certain look, a certain sound, maybe like born out of Arctic Monkeys, and it's got a more mainstream rock sound than we think of here, or I think of it being based in New York, in the US. And then, you know, have the privilege to talk to another counterpart in India, where indie music to them is anything that doesn't come out of a Bollywood film. So it's music that's produced for the sake of music, not in the context of a movie. But they still talk about it as indie. This is kind of like an alternative segment of the industry there. So it's kind of fascinating. And we have to like constantly shape and figure out how we you know, are using these various buckets, you know, to point users in the right way. Because, you know, if we try to copy everything from one market to the next, it doesn't work. And especially if you're going from like the UK to India. You know,
Yeah, totally, totally. Harrison, what's your take on that from a more of an indie side, I might say?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, the regional music thing I think is like super interesting, just because if you think about it, it's not anything new, obviously. Like you guys kind of commented before, like we've always had it. You're always going to sound like where you came from. But I feel like there's this whole newfound emphasis on like regional music. And that might be partially just because we have more of an aerial view now. We have the internet. We have a better glimpse into all these kind of ecosystems now. But I also think it's it kind of comes from the climate we're in, again, like having a lot of those filters lifted in the business and be able to drop content at any moment. And not just with like SoundCloud. I mean, I guess we're a good example, but even just getting up on other DSPs via aggregators pretty quickly. And I think that with that, we've kind of been driven back to this kind of single driven space in the music industry as well. It's almost like a flashback to like 45s or something in the 50s, and how important that was before like full lengths are important. And a lot of that comes from, and then, you know, because of that, we're all these collaborations are huge now. Like I think like the best example from my space is like Little Peep, like hanging out in a loft and with however many other artists, like 10 of them, just like constantly creating content and dropping it and throwing it up there. And with that, you know, you have all these different voices in a room, different vibes, different musicians that come from different spaces. And I think that kind of ultimately leads us back to the whole topic of this panel here, is like, where are these like genres coming from? All this genre bending and merging is coming from, you know, all these kids getting in a room together and throwing stuff together and dropping it and seeing what happens, seeing if it works or not.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot less pressure, you know, than to just make a polished thing and, you know, put out a whole project. It's like, just throw up a single and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need those like traditional, you don't need the A&R guy in the room to find you first to make it. You can you drop it, see if it works, and then they find you, you know, kind of.
Yeah, for sure. I'm interested, you mentioned collaborations. I kind of want to talk about that for a couple minutes. I know we haven't really talked about this before, but I think that's an interesting way that genres are shifting and bending, is that you have like you'll have like Drake and Skepta, you know, like you have like Rosalia and you know, you have like Bad Bunny, and you have all these emerging artists that are coming out of like completely different sounds and then working with, you know, maybe American artists or big UK artists. How are you guys thinking about collaboration within the future of genres?
I mean, I just did my spiel kind of on it, so I'll let you guys go.
With collaboration is interesting because I don't think you know what genre it is until the song comes out. So like there's a situation, so on my management side, where working with the artist Shoma Josie, she was collaborating with Chris Martin from Coldplay, right? Like she's a rapper in another genre that she's based in South Africa, which is Gqom. So she's like hip hop and Gqom, right? And then Chris Martin is, what do you consider Chris Martin? He's
John.
Pop.
Yeah, so you consider him pop, right? And now you put these two in a room and they make something. Now, what is that considered? And you never know until it comes out. If it's, you know, if the beat's kind of hard, it may be hip hop. If it's a little softer and have some pianos, it may be considered pop. But I think in that collaboration process, I think genre isn't really thought about. It's more about good.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, let's make something that's good. And then after it's made, then that's like my job to figure out what it is and how to communicate that to a Harrison or a John. Which can be difficult because sometimes you just don't know what to categorize a collaboration. But yeah, I think when people collaborate, you don't know what it is until it's complete.
Right, right. John, how are you thinking about collabs on the editorial side?
I think it's like the best way to, pull in maybe a new audience. I think Rosalia is such a good example.
Yeah.
I was a fan of El Guincho back in the day, and then, hearing her music and making that connection. And now I'm just like, I'm going to follow her wherever she goes, especially after seeing her live. It's like the most unbelievable show ever. But, I think it's like there are like flamenco. I would never find myself listening to flamenco music, but now I'm like, yeah, I want to understand what her influences are. So I think it is just a great way to like pull people in. Someone like me who, isn't listening to a lot of flamenco music, or, it's really the way I got into electronic music is through remixes.
Right.
And while that's maybe not such a direct collaboration often, I think it's a really important way still of, pulling people in that maybe wouldn't listen to a certain artist.
Totally. Yeah, I think all of these points are super interesting and we could probably go on forever, but we only have a limited time here. I guess just to kind of wrap it up, I have just one more thing I wanted to go over with you guys. And, the question is, are we moving towards a genre-less industry? The answer can't be sure. I feel like maybe it's more of a genre-full industry. I think, Harrison, you had mentioned that in one of our earlier talks. I think we'll continue to see the landscape grow and people collaborate and things really expand. Just to wrap it up, what are you guys looking forward to in music right now?
I'm looking forward to more collaborations. Just the mixing and blending of sounds and cultures. I think it's probably the most exciting thing in music. And I love that like everything is just global now. So it's like we're listening to everything from around the world. And I think that's like, that's really exciting because I think that just also opens up the collaboration landscape. Like again, Rosalia doing something with Travis Scott. That's like super interesting. You know what I mean? Like super, super interesting. So I'm looking forward to more collaboration and then just the infusion of like global sounds, different cultures, different locations, like all just mixing and blending in together.
Yeah, same. Harrison, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm curious to see where we go with this kind of space we're in right now. I think with any kind of like art form, there's or new technology in an artistic space, there's generally, maybe exploitation isn't the right word for it, but an over-index of that. There's like this over-index of that art form or technology to the extreme, right? And then there's always this kind of moment of like, wait a second, that maybe doesn't make sense in this context. Like I think the easiest example outside of music that I can think of is like CGI in film when it first came out. And then it's kind of like, let's pump the brakes here and like reel it in a little bit. And then there's this balance and it kind of turns into, I feel like people have a newfound kind of understanding and appreciation for a more traditional approach in the space. And there's like this, so I'd be curious to see like if we kind of come out of this. I don't think that where we're at is ever going to go away, like this kind of like bedroom rap, kind of being able to like drop content at any moment. And I think a lot of it is super important and great, but I do think that I'm curious to see if we kind of see people bending back to more traditional recording space. Maybe like they want to get back in a studio and be in a more traditional space. Maybe they want to record on tape rather than digitally, because there's just always that kind of newfound love, this nostalgic feeling for those kind of things. So I'm curious to see.
Yeah,
I think it is kind of happening already, but
for sure. Hey,
Yeah.
John, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I think Harrison said it pretty well. I mean, I've been a big fan of like the bedroom space, bedroom pop, bedroom rap for a while, and I feel like it comes in waves. Every 5 or 6 years, there's a new wave of like lo-fi scene, and I feel like one of the maybe benefits of quarantine, a silver lining is like kind of caught it right when the wave is on its way up right now, and sound is really really strong, and the community is strong, and it's growing really quickly. Artists like Charlie XCX putting out great like self-produced or home-produced albums. I think there's going to be a lot more of that. Hearing about bigger and bigger artists putting out their bedroom album, which maybe is good, maybe it means it's the coming of the end, but at the same time, like it's just like I think as a space, it's a leveler, everyone's using the same things. Maybe this guy has a more expensive mic, but the sound and the aesthetic is still there. And I think it can be in its best a really authentic, valuable sound for music.
Definitely.
So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully more collaboration through that. People that don't need to like find themselves in LA in a studio together.
Right.
Everyone's getting used to just sending stuff back and forth. So hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining this conversation and having such thoughtful insight. It's really awesome to talk to you guys.
Thanks, Jacqueline.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
See you guys later.